Her world was full of laughter, kisses, and his gentle touch. But behind the perfect smiles, a shadow waited to strike. Their life was perfect: big cars, dinner parties, and holidays in Dubai. The morning light touched the white walls of Adaora's mansion on Coral Street. The house was wide and quiet, the kind that echoed every sound. She stood by the glass window, watching the gardener water the flowers by the gate. The scent of fresh croissants came from the kitchen, and the soft hum of the generator filled the air. Her husband, Chidi, came down the stairs, his watch gleaming under the light. "You're working too hard," Adaora said, smiling faintly. He kissed her forehead. "Money doesn't sleep, my love," he replied, picking up his car keys. Before he left, Chidi turned back at the door. "I'll be back by evening. Let's eat at Ocean View tonight." Adaora nodded, her heart softening a little. She loved him, she always had, but lately, his eyes seemed to look through her, as if she was a memory he couldn't hold. When the gate opened and his car rolled out into the traffic, she watched until the sound faded. It was almost noon when Adaora's phone rang. She was arranging flowers in the living room, soft music playing from the speakers. The number on the screen was strange. "Madam Adaora," a man's voice said. "There's been an accident. A car crashed on Third Mainland Bridge. The ID on the driver's seat says, Mr. Chidi Okafor." For a moment, the world froze. Her hands went cold, the phone slipped from her fingers and hit the marble floor. "No," she whispered, her voice shaking. "That can't be true." She ran outside, shouting for the driver. Hours later, she stood at the hospital entrance, surrounded by flashing lights and voices that sounded far away. The doctors spoke softly, but their faces told her everything. They handed her a watch, the same one that gleamed under the morning sun. Her knees buckled. The floor felt like it was moving. A nurse held her, but Adaora couldn't hear anything anymore. It was as if someone had switched off all the sounds in the world. That night, Coral Street was silent. The chandeliers were off, and the big house felt hollow. The smell of his cologne still hung in the air, sharp and cruel. She sat by his empty chair, holding the watch to her chest, waiting for a voice that would never answer. The days after Chidi's death came like slow waves, heavy and endless. People came and went in black clothes, carrying trays of jollof rice and bottles of malt. They spoke in hushed voices, offering sympathy she couldn't hear. Adaora sat through it all, her eyes dry. The house was full, yet she felt alone. At night, she walked through the rooms, touching his things, his suits, his cologne, the photo of their wedding on the wall. One morning, a soft knock came at the door. When she opened it, she froze. Standing there was Kene, Chidi's twin brother. He looked exactly like him, only quieter, his eyes softer. "Adaora," he said, his voice low, "I came as soon as I heard. You don't have to go through this alone." Something in his tone broke the wall inside her, and for the first time in days, Adaora began to cry, not the quiet tears of before, but deep, shaking sobs that carried every piece of her pain. Kene came often in the weeks after the burial. At first, he only brought food, rice wrapped in foil, hot pepper soup, and soft bread from Adaora's favorite bakery. "You need to eat," he would say, setting the tray down carefully. She barely spoke, only nodding, her eyes tired. One afternoon, when the rain started, Kene noticed a leak near the sitting room window. Without asking, he took off his jacket and fixed it. Adaora watched from the couch, something tightening in her chest. He looked like Chidi when he worked, but gentler, slower, as if time didn't hurry him. Kene started working from Chidi's old office, helping manage the company to keep it running. One evening, as they walked by the pool, Adaora stopped suddenly. "Do you ever feel guilty for being alive?" she asked. Kene's face tightened. "Every day," he said quietly. The air between them grew still, heavy with something neither wanted to name. The night of the memorial dinner changed everything. Friends and business partners gathered in the wide living room, the air heavy with perfume and soft music. Adaora wore a black gown, her hair tied neatly. She gave a short speech, calm, graceful, every word trembling with love. Adaora walked to the balcony, staring at the city lights reflecting on the lagoon. "Sometimes I still hear his voice," she said softly. Kene stood beside her, close enough to feel her breath. He loved you, he said. We both did. She stepped back quickly, her heart racing. This isn't right, she whispered. Kene nodded, his face pained. I know. But neither of them moved. The weeks after the memorial felt different. Adaora started to wake up before sunrise, open the curtains, and let light flood the rooms again. She returned to her charity work, met clients, and started smiling at the guards when she drove out. One afternoon, after a long meeting, she found Kene asleep on the couch, his tie loose, papers scattered. For a while, she just stood there, watching. His face looked peaceful, familiar in a way that hurt. She reached out to adjust the blanket but stopped halfway. Her hand shook. She turned quickly and walked away, her chest tight. Later that night, as she lay awake, Adaora whispered to the darkness, God, what's happening to me? But no answer came. Across the lagoon, in a small rented apartment far from Coral Street, a man sat alone in the dark. His name was Chidi. He had paid someone to report his death, to disappear. But when he returned quietly a few months later, he saw something he never expected. Kene walking into his house, holding Adaora's hand at the gate. Chidi's jaw tightened as he watched them from his car. His chest burned, not just with anger, but something colder, sharper. Each day, he came back, unseen. He watched Adaora laugh again, saw Kene's car parked in the driveway. So this is what love looks like after death, he murmured. He took pictures, notes, everything. At night, he sat staring at their photos on his phone, torn between revenge and the ache of betrayal. Adaora was in the living room, folding clothes. Kene came in, his shirt slightly wet from the rain. The inverter's down again, he said, shaking his head. She laughed softly. Everything here breaks these days. Their eyes met for a moment too long. The rain hit harder against the windows, filling the silence. Then Adaora said in a low voice, sometimes I don't know who I am anymore. Kene took a slow breath and stepped closer. You're someone who's trying to live again, he said gently. She looked up, tears glinting in her eyes. When he reached out to wipe one away, her breath caught. The touch was too soft, too real. For a second, they forgot who they were supposed to be, widow and brother-in-law. The line between love and betrayal had vanished quietly, without sound. Chidi sat in his car outside Coral Street that same night. The house glowed faintly through the curtains, and he could see two shadows moving inside, one tall, one smaller. His heart thudded slowly. He had been watching for weeks, waiting for proof. Now, as he saw Kene place a hand on Adaora's shoulder, something inside him went still. So it's true, he whispered. He took a deep breath and started recording through his phone camera, the light from the screen washing his face in cold blue. Chidi drove away quietly, his jaw tight. He parked by the lagoon bridge and stared at the water for a long time. You took my life, he muttered, his voice low. But then it broke, softer, trembling. And yet, I still love you. He leaned his head against the steering wheel. The city noise faded. His plan was no longer just about anger. Adaora started finding Chidi's old cologne on her dresser, though she hadn't opened that drawer in months. One morning, a note slipped under her door read, "Do you miss me?" She froze, her heartbeat quick. The handwriting looked like his, but she shook her head. It can't be, she whispered. The next morning, Adaora drove to the company's old office to pick up files. When she entered, the receptionist looked pale. "Madam, someone was here asking about you," she said. He said his name was Mr. Chidi. Adaora dropped the file she was holding. "That's impossible," she whispered. "My husband is dead." The receptionist looked confused. "Then who signed his name in the visitor book?" Adaora opened the log. The handwriting was neat, firm, too familiar. Her knees weakened. She rushed out, calling Kene, but his line didn't go through. Back home, she found a white envelope on her doorstep. Inside was a single photograph, her and Kene sitting by the pool last week, his hand on hers. On the back, in neat writing, were 3 words, "I see you." The room spun. She sat on the floor, her breath short, her hands shaking. "Oh, God, she whispered, pressing her palms to her face. What have I done? She didn't know which scared her more, that someone was pretending to be Chidi or that her husband was truly alive. That evening, the sky turned gold over Coral Street. Kene came rushing in, his face tense. I saw your missed calls, he said. What's wrong? Adaora handed him the photo silently. His jaw tightened as he looked at it. Who could have? But he stopped suddenly. Adaora followed his gaze. Through the glass door, by the gate, a man stood watching them. He was thinner, darker, but the face was unmistakable. Adaora's breath caught. The world around her went silent. Chidi took a slow step closer, his voice low but clear through the glass. I died for both of you, he said. And you buried me too soon. The three of them stood in the wide living room. Adaora's hands shook as she gripped the edge of the table. Kene's jaw tightened, his voice breaking the silence first. Where have you been? He asked. Chidi's eyes flicked between them. Watching, he said quietly. Seeing how quickly life moves on. Adaora stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. We buried you. We mourned you. Why would you do this? Chidi's expression hardened. You needed a life without me, he said. And I needed to know what that life looked like. He pulled a folded photo from his pocket, the one of them by the pool. Now I know. Adaora's tears came then, slow and silent. You think this was easy? She asked. You think love just stopped because you were gone? Chidi's eyes softened for the first time. No, he said. I think love changed. And maybe it changed you too much. The room felt heavy, filled with things they couldn't unsay. They sat down at last, the tension thick. Adaora poured water into 3 glasses but only hers remained untouched. Tell us why, Kene said quietly. Why fake your death? Chidi leaned back, his voice calm but hollow. The company was collapsing. Some deals went wrong, and I owed people more than I could pay. The crash was my escape, a way to start over, to fix things from the shadows. He looked at his brother. I planned to come back when it was safe. But when I saw you two together, his words trailed off. Kene looked down, guilt written across his face. We never planned it, he said. It just happened. Adaora's eyes were red. I thought you were gone forever, she whispered. I wasn't trying to replace you, Chidi. I was just trying to breathe. Chidi looked at her for a long time, his anger melting into something quieter, hurt, maybe even sorrow. Do you love him? He asked softly. Adaora's lips parted, but no sound came. The silence that followed was heavier than any answer. The next morning, sunlight filled the living room, soft and pale. Chidi sat by the window, staring out at the lagoon. Adaora walked in, her steps slow but sure. What happens now? She asked. Chidi didn't turn around. That's up to you, he said. You both built something while I was gone. Maybe I was already dead to you long before the accident. His tone was calm, but his hands were tight on the chair. Adaora came closer. You left us in pieces, she said. You made me believe life ended that day. And now you want me to choose like it's a game. Kene entered then, standing a few feet behind her. No one wins here, he said quietly. We all broke something. The three of them stood there, husband, wife, brother, bound by love and regret. Finally, Adaora spoke, her voice trembling but clear. I can't love lies anymore, she said. Not the lie you lived, Chidi, and not the one I've been hiding. She turned to the window, eyes on the city outside. Maybe the only way to heal is to start again, without either of you. The words hung in the air. Adaora sat in the wide living room, staring at the portrait of her late husband, the man who had not died after all. Her hands trembled. How could love turn into something this heavy? Every piece of furniture reminded her of what she had done, of how grief and loneliness had tricked her into breaking her own heart. Chidi moved through the house without a word. He ate little, slept less. Adaora tried to act normal, arranging flowers, checking her phone, preparing tea that neither of them drank. Finally, Chidi spoke. I'm leaving. Her heart clenched. To where? He didn't answer at first. Then quietly, anywhere peace will have me. Tears filled her eyes. I never meant for this. He nodded slowly. That's what makes it worse. When he left, the silence that followed was unbearable. Adaora stood by the window long after his car disappeared into the Lagos traffic. For the first time, she understood that regret isn't loud, it whispers every day, reminding you of what you can't undo. Kene came a week later, looking older, quieter. Chidi's gone, he asked. She nodded. He sighed. I'm leaving too. Abuja. Maybe further. Months passed. Adaora sold the house. She couldn't breathe among the memories. She moved into a smaller apartment on Victoria Island, simple, clean, empty. Every morning she walked by the ocean, the wind in her face, the salt sharp in the air. It reminded her of cleansing, of starting again, even when the stains wouldn't fade. Moral lesson. Grief may tempt the heart to seek comfort in lies, but truth, no matter how painful, is the only path that keeps love pure. Those who build on deceit lose even what they meant to protect.